Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Marvel Legends Legion figure, which has some things that are pretty cool. You don't see too often in Marvel Legends, so that's kind of nice, but it also does some things which we see all too often in Marvel Legends, so that's kind of a bummer. I think those of you who are really into the character might be interested, and those of you who aren't, yeah, you might want to pass. But hey, don't leave yet just because I gave you that information. You're going to want to know more. So let's go ahead and get this guy off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands to the top of where his head would be about 6 1/8 inches. To the top of the hair, it's closer to 6 3/4, and that's going to make him about 15.75 centimeters, and then closer to 17. And those of you who ask me, why do you give measurements to the top of where the head would be rather than the actual height of the figure? Well, because practically speaking, who cares how tall the figure is if it's not in scale? And you can't measure scale by the top of his hair, otherwise he'd be way out of scale. You have to measure it to where his head would be, and then you can have an idea if he's going to fit in with your other figures or not. Okay, so question of the day. What do you guys think about this figure? Just going to put that out there right now. You don't have to answer it yet. You can answer it at the end of the review, but I'm very curious what you guys think, because you see, we have a lot of shading on here, which we don't normally see, and that's a good thing, but it's a very specific type of shading, which I personally don't like at all. And then, so we're going to go ahead and talk about the aesthetics, and this guy is covered in shading, which is not like your usual airbrush style shading like we saw on that Cyclops Phoenix 2-pack. This is kind of like big panels of color that have been laid down on top of the figure to be somewhat like directional, but also not really. To me, it's too much. It's way too stylized and way too, I guess, specific in that, like, there's no shading over here at all, and then we have these super heavy shading on the inside of the leg. Or same thing out here, we have the inside, but none here. None under the chest, but tons under the arms. But even then, under the arms is only like this little stripe. So I personally don't like this. I think they might as well not bother if they're going to do it like this. I don't like this shading at all. So that's basically what I was getting at with the question of the day. So as far as the rest of the aesthetic goes, the sculpt work for the torso is pretty nice. I like that. The arms look pretty good. For a fairly slender guy and wearing baggy pants, his quads are just ripped. They're huge. It makes the figure look quite strange, I think. If you don't care about proportions or don't notice it, then that's fine. It's not a big deal, but it's worth noting he has huge quads and the rest of him is fairly slender. The sculpt for the feet is nice. The sculpt for the arms is nice. Even the sculpt for the quads is nice, but they're very skinny and big at the same time, so it's a little bit weird. Whatever. Okay, on to the hair. Have to talk about the hair. They did a really good job with that. You can see each little strand is still in there. That's good. The top does look like you would want it to look, so that's good. Now the face. He looks deformed. He's supposed to be making a face like this. Like one eye's just wider open than the other. But the way I can't tell if it's sculpted this way or not, but it looks like to me he's not sculpted anywhere near enough to have an expression to warrant that giant eyeball. So to me, he just looks like he's deformed, like he's some kind of robot or something with a big eye on one side. So I hate that. The paint job doesn't help the sculpt, but also the sculpt just, like, it's not... I get they didn't do the open mouth, but I think they probably should have in this case. If one character was going to warrant a very stylized face, it would be this one. But I don't think the way they did it conveys the right look at all. To me, he just looks like he's got a problem. So I'm going to give this guy an aesthetic rating of only a 6 out of 10. They tried in a few places, but fell pretty far short, in my opinion. As far as accessories go, we have the 2 open hands that come out in the package, and then we have 2 fist hands. That's fine, but I think given the fact that this head is no good, another head would be nice. So 5 out of 10, that's a pretty slim pickings. Alright, as far as articulation goes, we are on our double ball peg situation, which, as you can see, moves all over the place. You could do whatever you want with this guy. They didn't do a great job in execution because you can see how much range you're losing. We have a giant peg at the top. The peg at the bottom, if it is bigger, it's very well covered by the neck. That needs to be open far more. If you put as big a peg as you can fit in there, and then as big an opening as you can allow for it to not pop out, that gives you so much more range. As you can see, there's very little range on that bottom peg, so that's a bit of a bummer. But even with that problem, you still get really good range out of this guy. He can look up, though not as far as he should be able to. He can look down. Obviously, it leans side or rotates side to side, but you get lean that looks way more natural. You can lean in 2 directions at once now. The double ball peg is definitely the way to go. Always, always, always for next. It's so much better. I mean, unless you have some kind of weird design where you need hinges and stuff. But for basic neck, double ball peg is awesome. For the shoulders, we get our full rotation. They go up to the side, pretty much horizontal, that's fine. Bicep swivel is fine, double jointed elbow is fine. Wrists have a swivel and a hinge, that's all good. Ab crunch on this guy. It does lean back. It's a bit harsh. We have a bit of a pregnancy situation here. I don't know why they don't just cut more of that in. They don't need all that there. It's weird. And he doesn't lean forward as far as I would like. What is going on with figures these days leaning all the way back and then not leaning forward at all? What's happening? Why is that like every figure from McFarlane is like that. Hasbro seems to be doing it now too. Waist twist is fine. Hips go out to the side very nicely. Could be a little farther, of course, but that should be more than enough. So I'm all right with that, especially since they look pretty good in place. Going forward, again, no problem at all. This is a guy. He's a good example of why you don't need those drop down ball pegs, those hinge ball pegs. If you just sculpt it right and put the pivot point where it belongs in the hip, you can bring the leg up all the way better than horizontal. You can bring it all the way out to the side. You don't ever need a hinge ball peg really for a normal human type design. It's over-engineered and it doesn't work well. They do go back a little bit. Thigh swivel is fine. Double jointed knee is fine. Are these the same pants as Shang-Chi? I think they are. That would explain maybe the extra muscles. You get a shin swivel right there. Foot goes all the way back. Goes really far forward if you force it just a bit like that, and a really nice ankle rocker. So yeah, the articulation on this guy is not too bad. I like the neck. They need to refine their engineering just a little bit to make things work a little bit better, but it still works pretty well. So I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10 for articulation. The ab crunch kind of blows, but the rest is solid. So yeah, I don't know. I'm torn about this guy. I like that they put shading on there, and from a distance it makes it look better than if it didn't have any, but up close it looks like butts to me. I hate this shading. The sculpt is pretty good. Just throw the figure around. And the articulation is pretty good, so I'm torn. As a reviewer, I'm going to give it an overall rating of... The shading is driving me nuts because in certain directions it looks nice, but if you look from the side, he looks like he has a stripe on his shirt. 7 out of 10. Overall rating, 7 out of 10. The shading just isn't good enough. It's not. It's a good idea, but it needs to be everywhere and way more purposeful and not so heavy. That's a bit much. That looks like he's almost cell shaded. So yeah, 7 out of 10. I like the figure personally, but that shading is definitely weird. So let me know what you guys think. That's the question of the day, particularly about the shading, but then also about the crazy eye. And we'll talk down there. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. In the meantime, keep collecting.